Welcome, everyone, to the Greenspace Candidate Forum. I'm Molly Samuel with WABE in Atlanta, and I'm joined here by Thomas Wheatley from Axios. And we have the two candidates who are running for Atlanta City Council President with us, Rohit Malhotra and Marci Collier Overstreet. Thanks to all of you all for joining us. We had 150 attendees registered, which is a great turnout, and we are glad that you all are here this evening. This Greenspace Forum is hosted by Park Pride and 11 Greenspace partners, including the Atlanta Beltline Partnership, Birds Georgia, Eco Action, Georgia Conservancy, Greening Youth Foundation, Piedmont Park Conservancy, the Conservation Fund, the Nature Conservancy, the Trust for Public Land, Trees Atlanta, and West Atlanta Watershed Alliance. Each of these organizations believes in the importance of investing in and protecting our parks, along with the flora and fauna that call these parks home. This forum is hosted by a group of 501c3s, and the approach is for the forum to be educational and nonpartisan. We'll hear a lot of ideas and opinions tonight, but views expressed will not necessarily be those of the sponsoring organizations. The idea is to keep things open-ended and let the candidates speak for themselves. The hosting nonprofit selected us as moderators because they believe the mindset of a journalist asking good questions without pointing towards particular answers will result in a better discussion. And please note that this meeting is being recorded.
I'm sorry, have I been muted this entire time? I apologize.
That you have.
Okay, we also wanted to share a brief overview of the structure that we'll be following this evening. Candidates are given equal speaking time. Time limits are set for opening statements, question responses, rebuttals, and closing remarks. We will enforce time limits, and the candidates will be muted if they go over. The order of speaking is drawn randomly and rotated fairly. Everyone must treat each other respectfully. No personal attacks, insults, or inflammatory language. Attendees can share their respectful, constructive thoughts in the chat. This means no profanity, hate speech, etc. If the code of conduct is not adhered to, we reserve the right to close the chat. We will have an opportunity for audience Q&A near the end of the program. You can use the chat to ask a question, which needs to adhere to the code of conduct. Questions must apply to both candidates. No targeting one individual candidate. Preface your question with question in all caps. If your question is selected, we will ask you to use the raise hand feature in Zoom or physically wave. We will unmute you to ask the question in your own voice. However, we have limited time for questions and not all will be selected. One last bit of housekeeping. Here's the flow that you can all expect this evening. We will begin with candidate instructions, followed by 30 minutes of thematic questions, then 10 minutes of audience Q&A with questions selected by Park Pride, and lastly, closing statements from each candidate. A 30-second rebuttal will be allowed if the candidate references their opponent or their opponent's positions. With that, let's get started. Oh, please go ahead.
We did a coin toss. Thank you, Thomas, for the coin toss. And Marci Collier Overstreet will go first with her opening statement.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am Marci Collier Overstreet, Council Member Marci Collier Overstreet, second term Council Member for the Atlanta City Council, running for Council President. Why am I running for Council President? Because while on Council, I have been a consensus builder, a collaborator, and a communicator, and I intend to do that as Council President. The Council President should absolutely have great relationships with Council members, the administration, and all of the City Hall departments, and that I do. It is important that we continue the great work that we've been doing while I've been on Council for the past 4 to 8 years, and I would like to keep that good work going. While on Council, I've also been rooted in work and living here in the city of Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta. I was raised here. I raised my own children here. I was married here in the city of Atlanta. Atlanta is very dear to me. So I am thankful to be here to speak about green spaces and any other topic that anyone would like to speak about today. It is important also for everyone to know that I am ready for this job on day one. This is a second in command position for the city of Atlanta, and it needs to be taken seriously. So the president is a role that should be respected. You need to be ready on day one, and that I am. I'd also like to add that while on council, I've been the transportation chair, vice chair for 8 whole years, as well as the zoning chair for 2 years. And those are citywide positions. I am ready to go on day one to be the leader and your president for the Atlanta City Council. Vote Marci Overstreet for Atlanta City Council. If you need more information than what we provide today, go to voteoverstreet.com. Thank
you. And Rohit Malhotra, you can go ahead with your opening statement now.
Awesome. Thanks y'all so much for hosting this. This is my name is Rohit Malhotra. I'm proudly running to be the next city council president for the city of Atlanta. And I'm so grateful to be around so many people that I have worked with over the course of the past 15 years. Just amazing to see so many great and familiar faces. I'm proudly running for city council president to build a city that works for working families, that works for small businesses, and for every neighborhood across this city. I love this city dearly. I grew up here, and it's a city that I want to make sure has good public policy. That's how I've always expressed my service and my work. Over the past 15 years, I've worked in the Obama administration. I have a policy degree, and I ran an organization for the past 10 years proudly called the Center for Civic Innovation, which many of you know. But what I want to make sure that I address kind of the purpose of why we're here today, which is to protect our green spaces. And as a candidate for this office, which is a public advocacy office, it is an office that is elected by everyone in Atlanta because it reports to the public, not anyone else. I want to make sure that, one, we're setting better and measurable targets around protecting our tree canopy. Number two, that we're reducing our impervious cover, and that we have 100% of our residents are within 10 minutes of a park. I think these are metrics that need to be put in place that have a lot of implication around what green infrastructure is and how it's used within our planning processes. But I want to make sure that every time we're doing this work, we're viewing it through the lens of equity and also justice, because we know that these issues are not just an issue that affects one part of town. These are issues that affect the entire city of Atlanta, but they do affect parts of the city differently. And I think that's part of the conversation I'm excited to have today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, candidates. We're now going to move into the first topic this evening, which is vision and priorities. Marci, we'll start with you. This first question is 2 minutes. How would you balance supporting Atlanta's growth with protecting natural resources, including the city's tree canopy?
So while on council for the past 8 years, I've actually grown to love everything about Greenspace. And we've had quite a few conversations around protecting our canopy. The district that I live in actually has the second most dense canopy in the city of Atlanta, second only to Buckhead's District 8. And so I live in a single family zone home with a front yard and a backyard and lots of trees. And my neighborhood actually has lots of trees. So I am a tree lover. I'm someone that actually wants to make sure that we are protecting our tree canopy. And I've actually worked on city council in that same vein, making sure that the trees that we do have are being protected and making sure that also any developers are aware of how important trees are to us. It's also important that we protect those that are most vulnerable, and I'm talking like seniors or those that are underserved, that we protect them from their trees. So I've advocated for those that need help to get trees pruned back in their neighborhoods, and ones that are either dying, disease, or in bad health. And those are the important principles. I've also made sure that I've always been at the table for conversations to understand what we're doing not so good in the city of Atlanta where trees are concerned. I've had some very very uncomfortable conversations and learned a lot, because it really is important that everyone feels part of being at the table for our tree conversations. Atlanta's unique. We live in a city that is in a forest. And so I've been at the table the entire 8 years trying to preserve our trees and speaking up for our density.
Thank you. Rohit, 2 minutes for the same question.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the first things first, we are this city in a forest, but we have not lived up to the promise that we made to make sure that we are protecting our tree canopy. We're behind. We're behind schedule. By 2023, we were supposed to have 50% coverage. We're not there yet. And so I think when we think about this, I think first thing that we need to do is look at measurement. So anytime I approach any issue, first thing I look at is what does the data tell us? And for us, oftentimes we don't use measurable targets around the tree canopy as an example to really set like how are we going to get there? What are the actual steps that we're going to take to be there, and what protections have to be in place to do so? I think a lot of that comes into our planning process. So when you ask about vision, for me, I think these are the types of conversation that we need to be having through our planning process every single step of the way, throughout the year. But I also think we need to have this conversation around the budgeting process, because way too often when we actually end up compromising on our promises as it relates to our green infrastructure and as it relates to the tree canopy, it often comes in the budget that it just becomes, well, then how are we ever going to be able to afford it? Or is it even possible? And I think that those conversations, when they're done through the budgeting process and the planning process appropriately, allow us to make sure that green infrastructure is not an afterthought, but it's an actual intentional process that when we're thinking about stormwater systems or we're thinking about permeable surfaces, that those things are things that we're thinking of every single step of the way. It also is important that we think about, how we have climate adaptation that's actually built in as well, to make sure we're thinking about things like absorbing flooding or the heat index going up, which affects people directly as well. So I think you start with measurement. Then you make sure that you are putting dollars next to the plan that you are measuring against, and then you're actually measuring our performance and figure out what's working and what's not.
For our next question, you all will also each get 2 minutes to answer this, and we'll start with Rohit first this time. What's your vision for Atlanta's parks and green spaces? Paint a picture of what the city's parks, green spaces, and urban ecology could look like now and into the future.
Yeah, I think, I agree with a lot of the research that people on this call have already put out, that people should be within a 10-minute walk to a green space. It's about accessibility first and foremost. Can I get to it? And then if I can get to it, what does it feel like? I think parks are a part of our public safety plan. It is a part of what makes the city feel resilient. It's what makes people feel comfortable. It's what builds community. I was just at a place where a bunch of trees were taken out of someone's yard, and they were just putting a big development right through the front of it. And they were like, it doesn't. They were a third generation in Atlanta, and they were like, it doesn't even feel like Atlanta anymore. They took apart something that wasn't just important for all the ecological reasons, but it was important for cultural reasons. I also think, like, when we talk about our infrastructure and our green infrastructure, this also provides an opportunity for making sure that when we're talking about sidewalks that have green infrastructure around them, it is about making sure that if you're in a wheelchair and you need to be able to have some cover and some shade, that also matters, that those types of indexes are different neighborhood by neighborhood. So to me, it's about accessibility, it's about comfortability, it's about safety, it's about livability, but it's also about equity. When I talk about equity, we have to realize that some parts of this city have a 25-year life expectancy gap from just a couple miles. And a lot of that has to do with the actual infrastructure and environment in those spaces. That when we tear down certain parts of spaces and the heat index is going up, it affects neighborhoods and communities where we have incentivized development that has been against the very green infrastructure that's needed for this city. So when I think about this, my vision is that I want people to continue to refer to the city as a city in the forest, but we got to actually practice that as well.
Thank you. And Marci, now we'll come to you. Paint us a picture of your vision for parks and green space here in Atlanta.
Oh, so I will tell you, first of all, I want everyone to know now that when I first got on council, I didn't know how much in love I would be with our green spaces and actually seeing how green spaces transform our communities, right? And so while on council, I've been able to have a deep vision about what our green spaces need to look like and not just dream it up, but I've done field trips and actually actualized new green space in my district. I was driving along and saw dogs playing in a park, and I thought, I don't have a dog park south of 20, and certainly not in District 11. I want a dog park. So I made sure that I got with Parks and Recs and did a field trip and showed them the dog park that I'd like to see in my district, found the park that I'd like to put it in, and Melvin Drive now has a beautiful dog park, one for small dogs and one for big dogs. That was done under my watch. Also realized that MPUQ did not have a green space. So my vision was that we need to make sure that MPUQ has a park. Establish a commission, found the land, and now there's a park. I get selfies sent to me all the time. And I want to thank Michael Halicki for making sure that he stood next to me the entire time that I was doing that. So a vision for me for green space now and in the past and in the future looks like making sure that I continue to do the work that I've been doing for the past 8 years, realizing where our gaps are in our green space. I've been also making sure that I'm installing sidewalks so that people can actually make it to our beautiful green spaces that we've actually turned up a notch here in District 11. And I'd like to do this citywide. Green space make an area so much more livable.
Thanks, y'all. Our next topic is going to be equity and access. Atlanta has plans to build parks and trails in neighborhoods, some of which are historically disinvested communities. For example, the Valley of the Hawks project in Bankhead or the Silver Comet Connector. How would you provide access equitably to those parks and trails? And how do you provide access without displacing existing residents? It's a 2-minute response time, and we will start with Rohit.
Yeah, so let's start with the project that you actually mentioned, the one on the west side. This is the challenge. Like you can almost place exactly where these places have been because it's not just that they were ignored just today. They've been ignored for a long time, for decades here. And so this specific project, when we think about equity here, the first thing when I think about, if you really want people to believe what it is that you are saying, that you really care about what they are, about the community, look at the budget. I think we need to look at where spending has actually happened in order to provide dollars for these projects to go. So there are cool one-off things that are happening. But when I talk about investment, when I look at it, I look at for example, our entire infrastructure bond project that we have. The fact that we've spent less than 10% of our infrastructure bond money, and the majority of that money went north of the city. It is not going to the neighborhoods and communities that have been asking for it over and over and over again. So when we talk about equity, we have to make sure that there is an actual, just as the response has been disproportionate, we need to make sure our response to this is appropriate, that we are saying, okay, how do we invest the dollars? But then when we invest the dollars, what we know is that when you create green spaces and places, you do it upon the promise of the people who are already there in the name of equity. And then it drives prices up. And then people can't afford to be there anymore. Property values increase, et cetera. And it's usually these same communities that are pushed out. So greening of an area ends up leading to displacement. I actually think we should intentionally, on the front end of the planning process, create anti-displacement dollars that are there to make sure that the property tax increases and the challenges that neighborhoods experience once we've done the right thing, that we can offset the costs that they experience and the cost burden that they experience. And they should be able to actually enjoy the very thing that was built in their name. I think that's what equity actually looks like.
Thank you. Marci?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. How would you provide access equitably to those parks and trails? And how do you provide access without displacing existing residents?
Absolutely. So again, this is what I've been doing for the past 8 years, and I want to thank Park Pride again for actually always being so intentional about reaching into the underserved areas and areas that had normally received green space dollars and allowing us to start from scratch, writing grants. These things have happened under my watch, and I've made a huge difference in several of our parks. Deerwood Park, Cascade Springs Nature Preserve is now on the map like nobody's business because of the investments that's actually happening. We're not just imagining that we're doing this work, we're actually getting this work done. We were at Cascade Springs Nature Preserve just today, making sure that we were unveiling a new historical marker for Jim Maddox, 32 years, the longest sitting council person in history of the city of Atlanta. And that space is so beautiful and gorgeous that a lot of people just took off, start walking into the park, the preserve. And those are just a small amount of things that we've done. We've actually invested in John A. White Park. We have a new senior facility going there. We're changing a whole lot of different areas in the city of Atlanta, south of 20. So there is an investment happening. There was I'd say a disconnect, or we didn't have the partnerships that we needed before I got on council. But I will tell you what, as soon as I got on council, I started bringing over the partners. I actually had Atlanta Botanical Gardens to introduce them to Cascade Springs Nature Preserve. I met with Park Pride, and I made sure that I got going on starting up all kinds of new friends groups, friends of several parks. We have so much more growth south of 20, green space wise. It's actually remarkable and making a really big difference in all of our neighborhoods. So, doing the work.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to tree canopy, climate resilience, and neighborhood quality of life. And each of these questions will have 2-minute answers. Marci, we'll start with you first. Your first question is, earlier this year, the Atlanta City Council passed an updated tree protection ordinance. We're coming back to the trees for a minute. Even as they voted on it, some council members said they believe there was more work to do to protect trees, and the planning department has said it will work on updates to tree preservation standards. Would you revisit tree protection discussions? And if so, how would you balance tree protection with requests coming in from developers?
Absolutely. The answer is yes. I would absolutely revisit it. I wanted to make sure we got something done. That thing had been kicked down the just kicked down the road so long that I knew that we needed to do something to make sure that we were balancing our trees with the recompense, and there were a whole lot of other mechanisms that were going on there, and we had to do something. So we did get some legislation done. I've actually already started speaking with council members, including Mary Norwood. We are at the table now trying to figure out some other things to do. So it's not just, something that we are thinking about doing. We're actually already making sure that we are working on our new tree protective ordinance. And I'm glad that we did actually finish that ordinance, because it was absolutely necessary to do at that time. And I'm so glad also that many council members are realizing that there's so much more work that we can do. I would like to put more tree protection in our tree protective ordinance. And I would also like to make sure that we stop the clear cutting. And we're figuring out ways to do that where zoning isn't impaired and affordable housing isn't impaired. It really is a delicate balance that happens when you're addressing the tree canopy. And I absolutely want to hold on to our trees. So that's just some of the things that we're working on now. And I know for sure that we are going to amend the tree protective ordinance.
Thank you. Rohit, now we'll come to you. Are you open to revisiting tree protection discussions? And if so, how do you balance the needs of the trees, needs of the developers?
Yeah, this to me, it represents when the goal is clear. Community organizations have been working on this for years, updating this protection ordinance. A lot of organizations that are here have been pushing for years for this to be better. They presented an actual what it should look like. They presented the option, the legislation. They negotiated it. They talked about it. And then in the 11th hour, right? Once again, they present a piece of legislation and then it flips into something else, where developers now have, incentive structures put in place that go against the very spirit of how the tree ordinance, the tree protection ordinance was originally written. You had advocates who have been saying, "Wait a second, like that feels like a bait and switch. Like you said you were going to do this and then you did that." I think I find it difficult when council often, and this puts council in a very difficult position because they make promises to the constituents that they have. And then all of a sudden, if there's an imbalance of power, all of a sudden you end up seeing them say, well, actually, we're going to go back and we're going to rewrite the whole thing and we're going to put all these exemptions in place. I think what we're not talking about is that this tree protection ordinance, if it still needed time, council should have taken that time. I encourage council that is the time that we should always try to get this as right as we possibly can, not say, well, let's just pass something imperfect and we can deal with it later. That's how we get longstanding challenges. And so, the thing that I'm most concerned about is the exemptions that are built into here, which were, co-sponsored by folks that, like, I think that provides a off-ramp for developers to be able to say, well, we can just go on this exemption. We don't actually have to follow through on that. And I'm not saying developers are the enemy here, but I am saying that we are giving them a pass and not actually protecting the trees in the way that we said we would, which I think is unfortunate.
For the next question, we're going to discuss stormwater, and you'll each have 2 minutes to answer this one. There are Atlanta neighborhoods that have dealt with flooding for decades. Extreme weather caused by climate change is adding to this problem, deepening the impact and raising concerns that it will only get worse. How would you like to see Atlanta address these stormwater issues? How would you propose paying for it? And how will you ensure funds are generated and deployed equitably? Rohit, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think it's the Trust for Public Land is the group that talked about expanding sponge infrastructure and actually looking and revisiting a lot of our infrastructure that we can be using as we're building out a lot, because there's still a lot of infrastructure dollars that are going to be spent. What we need to do is actually put some of these like protections and this technology in place, which is it's not like crazy technology. It's something that's been tried and true and used across the country. But I think finding and making sure that we're being proactive about doing climate adaptation work, saying, okay, if this is a place that is prone for flooding, how do you put infrastructure in place that can absorb that? I also think that we have to create protections in place for the residents that are there. For a lot of residents, like if you think about the residents in Peoplestown, flooding has affected them for so long, and then there's no protection for them. And actually, the city has used eminent domain to end up taking people's homes, right? And that is, I think, a situation where people are like, this is not something that they can control. And as climate challenges become much more difficult and affect people's lives a lot more, we have to take a geographic approach to this to say, what protections can we put in place? What repair do we need to put in place? And then what can we make sure that we're doing for the residents who are within those zones, within those areas, to make sure that the damage that occurs and that happens to their homes, that we're thinking about that. And that requires us to bake this into our budget. It requires us to bake it into planning. But if we are using kind of the same tried and true infrastructure to address a ever-changing problem and not changing the way that we're actually laying down infrastructure in our parks or on our right alongside our roads, I think we are making the communities that are susceptible to flooding even more. It's going to be even more damaging to them. That has financial consequences, economic consequences, social consequences, and I think that's something we need to address head on.
Thank you, Marci.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree with Rohit on any of that. But I also like to add that recent history shows that the more we develop, the more these issues will arise. And our mayor has actually addressed this in a way this year in prioritizing like $1 billion investment in our infrastructure, our water infrastructure. And I think that is needed for sure, because we can't continue to wash away the areas that we're building. And so I absolutely support funding from all levels. That's federal, that's state, that's municipal bonds, that's any funding that we can possibly gather, because I think that all funding is going to be necessary to address this. I know that Shirley Franklin was what they call our sewer mayor, right? And I think that it's time for us to have another water mayor. And it is absolutely something that we cannot take for granted. I know when we did the Cascade Complete Streets, people were very inconvenienced, and it's an inconvenient, expensive thing to fix water. So it's easy to not want to do it. And it was absolutely inconvenient on Cascade Road for sure. But we got a whole new water system because it was needed. And it really did hamper everyone being able to traverse back and forth to work and back and forth to home and to our green spaces. So water situations are absolutely hard to manage, but it's worse if you don't manage them. So I absolutely agree that we should prioritize a water plan. If it's $1 billion, we need to get that funded from all of the ways that I just spoke about.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to funding, budget, and maintenance. And this question will have 2 minutes each. Marci, we'll start with you. Funding to conserve green spaces, build and improve parks, and keep these public spaces in a good state of repair is always limited. What are your innovative policy ideas to increase green space funding and maintenance, and how will you ensure that that funding is spent equitably?
Well, we've been using several different ways of funding our green spaces. I will also like to tell you that since I've been on council, we've acquired over 600 new acres of natural areas that should be converted for green space for sure. And that is more than the combined 12 years before I got on council. And so we have really prioritized green space under my time on council, because we understand the difference that it makes in the quality of life. And it also allows us to keep the health variables where they need to be, because I do agree that there you can tell how life expectancy depending on zip code, and we want to change that here in the city of Atlanta. So I do believe that we're in the right direction in acquiring land. And I also believe that we've been innovative in that this year we actually had a $750,000 community grant program that was funded, that is in our budget, because we feel the importance of our green spaces. I was one of the first council members to raise my hand and put my money where my mouth is in supporting green space priorities. And I worked with Park Pride to do so, and really believe that I did the right thing, and will do it again for sure. Our budget should absolutely reflect our importance of prioritizing green space. It really does make a huge difference in everybody's life, and I'm willing to continue to do that work as president of council.
Thank you. And Rohit, now we'll go to you. Your ideas around funding and maintaining.
Yeah. So when we talk about funding, we got to talk about the budget. And this is where I've spent a lot of my time. Some of y'all may know, created a website called atlbudget.org that allows you to dissect the budget and really understand it full and full. So I've seen this, but I've been looking at budgets for 15 years on this. And when I look at the parks budget has gone up only incrementally over time. And you've kind of seen it goes up and then it goes down and then it goes up and then it goes down. And oftentimes the up is on personnel expenses and not enough on the rest of what we need. But also, if you look at everything that it is under, again, it is not prioritized enough in what parks actually offer. Because if you just view parks as green spaces or just places to play or hang out, then you miss the opportunity to view parks as public safety, because then you would think about it as in the spending around public safety. You would think about it in the spending around planning. You would think about it in the spending around transportation. Like these are all parts of parks, but parks funding has dropped way too low in the budget. And given where federal funding is going, I think we're in a situation where we're going to have to get creative about where those dollars are going to come from. I'd love to explore options like social impact bonds that allow us to do more forward-facing thinking around what is the actual health benefits and the alleviation on public services that happens when we create when we actually expand our green spaces. You can use that rather than borrowing money that we have to pay back in other instruments through tax or raising money in a different way or raising property taxes. You can actually do it through the alleviation of pressures on public services that happen when you have more green spaces. There's studies around the country that have shown this, that when we expand our green spaces, it actually saves us a lot of money. And so that's how you can use those cost savings in the future to invest in it on the front end. So it's preventative care for the city.
Thanks, y'all. Our final thematic question deals with leveraging nonprofits. This is a question with a 1-minute response time. How do you view the relationship between the city and nonprofit organizations today? How can those relationships help Atlanta make progress on green space and related initiatives? Rohit, we'll start with you.
This question is really personal for me. I've been a nonprofit executive director for the past 12 years. And I think when we work well with the city of Atlanta, they've used, for a lot of these organizations, oftentimes they'll partner with us as long as you agree with them. And then when you disagree, then all of a sudden you get ostracized, you get pushed to the side, you lose potential for funding. And trust me, I'm experiencing it right now, going through a political environment where you are honestly, your work gets put under attack and for unreasonably with cherry picked data. I think this is very dangerous. And I think it's very dangerous to do, particularly in a moment where Donald Trump is doing the exact same thing to organizations around the country. I've worked with so many of you here. I think the partnerships between nonprofits and the city is going to be a top priority for me because I actually understand how nonprofits work. I understand that nonprofits go through ebbs and flows, have good times, bad times, that like leadership is very difficult in the nonprofit sector. But this is the most important sector that this city has because without it, the city is not able to deliver on services in the way that I think it needs to. So,
Marci?
I believe that working with nonprofits is invaluable. I've done it while on council. I've seen a huge difference. I will say that I think that the city of Atlanta has raised its game by working with nonprofits, especially some of the names and people that I see on this call. I do know that nonprofits allow the city to expand what they are already doing. I know that it's made a difference in our maintenance program here in Southwest Atlanta when partnering with nonprofits. It's just extra eyes and extra hands and extra opportunity and extra experience and extra participation when you are adding a nonprofit. And I've had nothing but good results with working with nonprofits. And I've actually brought several of them to partner in our district, especially at Cascade Springs Nature Preserve, and I will certainly do it again throughout. I think you're muted.
I think we are turning it over to Michael now.
Yes, you are. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So we're going to go to the audience questions portion of this, and we will continue to alternate. And I see that we have two different questions that have been asked by Lauren Welsh. I would love for her to ask her most recent, or the second one that she's asked about public spaces. And if you can either wave your hand so we can unmute you if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question, Lauren.
Are these questions in the chat?
They are in the chat, yes.
I'm sorry, I hadn't looked
All
at
right. Sorry, can y'all hear me? I'm technologically challenged.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. So, Michael, you had asked me to specify the second question about public spaces and plazas. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So, traditionally, we think of park spaces as I live in Candler Park. We have the lovely Candler Park with the rolling hills, golf courses, and a brand new playground. Thank you, Park Pride, for the grant. We also have a lot of public spaces in our city that are very underutilized. So I think of, for example, Little Five Points. We have a plaza that is under construction right now. Again, thank you, Park Pride. And there's fear in the neighborhood of, great, we're now going to create this new wonderful plaza. How do we activate it to encourage positive activity? We have a lot of public plazas or small spaces that really could use better activation. And frankly, I don't have the answer. So that's why I'm asking y'all, do you have any thoughts about how to better activate some of our public spaces that aren't traditionally seen as parks and green space?
I'm happy to answer that. Is that okay?
I was trying to recall who are we next on our alternating order?
I'm sorry.
I want to say it's Rohit's turn first.
All right. Rohit, do you want to jump in first? You have 1 minute.
Councilmember, you can go ahead.
Thank you.
If you want to go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Excellent.
Thank you. I've actually activated a couple plazas, and it really is a fun assignment. The community really loves coming together to decide what to do with it. Funding is always the issue, but it's not impossible to find the funding. We activated a plaza where we erected the Zenona Clayton statue across from the Truist building downtown. It's beautiful. Everyone gets to weigh in and talk about what they'd like to see. We activated a plaza for art installation. Everyone gets to weigh in to see what they'd like to do. And then you do have to start interviewing some of the artists to come to give you vision. And the most important thing is the funding. And a lot of times community benefits agreements they'll agree to fund these projects. And I've done that at least 2 to 3 times. So it can happen.
And Rohit, your response.
Yeah, so this has always been one of my favorite things about Atlanta. Like growing up here, I would go on Broad Street, or I'd be in Low Five, or I'd these are the places I would hang out as a, young person in the city. And I think one of the most beautiful parts is like when it is organic, and it is obviously in partnership and relationship with the community. I mean, there is so much talent, so much opportunity that already exists. I think the challenge often becomes is what types of activations do we incentivize, and what kind of activations end up getting criminalized? And I think that that's a very important, delicate conversation. When I'm at neighborhood meetings, sometimes we always talk about well, this person came up and they were selling water, and they were like, these kids were selling water, and I'm like, that's awesome, because also, when there's a bunch of kids selling Girl Scout cookies, we love that, right? But if it's a bunch of kids who are selling water, how do we put incentives in place to make sure that we're not criminalizing their entrepreneurial spirit? We're putting music back into these spaces. We're partnering with the small businesses in the area. All of that is, I think, really, really important. Incentivize versus criminalize.
Thank you. Our next question we're going to go to, and Ursula has asked a question that I've prompted in the chat, will be next. That's about working with small nonprofits. Ursula, can you please state your question?
Yes. So we are a nonprofit, and we also work with our park at Deerwood. And one of the things that happens often is that when we talk about, the city working with nonprofits, they're working with big nonprofits, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, but the smaller nonprofits who also have community work, right? Not just building buildings and infrastructure, but are on the grounds of the community. We are the ones who are touching the people. We're getting them to the YMCAs, and we're getting them to the Boys and Girls Club. How are you going to include those small nonprofits so that they have a voice as well, or they can also get those contracts as well.
So Marci, would you like to take that one next?
Sure. So the city of Atlanta has a bid system for procurement. However, I would also like to know, are you talking about programming for the parks? Because I'm absolutely open to hear from you about programming. Would that be like William Walker or just Deerwood? Like what is it that you would like to do as a small nonprofit? Well, I mean, just know that I'm open to hearing what you would like to do with the parks. If it's
Sorry, I was unmuted.
I'm sorry. If it's programming, I would love to hear more about what that programming looks like. Did you come when we had at Deerwood? Did you come to the ATL trails?
Yes,
ATL?
we were there.
That's what I okay.
Yeah, we were there, and we did our inputs and everything.
Yes.
And just because you have Atlanta moving forward, you have all of these city programs, right? And
Right.
we're able to get into any of them. We are vendors. We have been to the big, thing at Georgia World Congress Center. We're not able to get in. And so therefore we are able to do other cities and other states. But our business and our nonprofit is here, and we're in the city of Atlanta. If you notice, when Kendall is on TV stations and news, they say that she's a part of city of South Fulton. No, she's a product of city of Atlanta. And
so I'd like to go ahead and transition to Rohit to give him a chance to answer the question. Rohit, can you please go ahead?
Yeah, Ursula, I love this question because this is literally what I have spent the past 10 years focused on. I've through the Center for Civic Innovation, a lot of what we did was identify community-based organizations that are just not getting a fair shot. 250 organizations, mostly Black-led, women-led organizations over the course of the past 10 years, try to move dollars to them and also remove barriers to actually be able to get these contracts. For a lot of small businesses and organizations going through the procurement process, they're like, well, you got to pay a guy, you got to figure this out, you got to go through this loophole, and then you didn't fill out the paperwork back. Now you got to run it back. This is what's wrong. And I think it's because when we talk about small nonprofits, we talk about it as charity or we talk about it as an afterthought. With me as city council president, I'm going to talk about small nonprofits as economic development, that you are an essential component to the growth of this city because the services that you offer, the perspectives that you provide, the actual community relationships that you have are literally things that the city does not have. And that is intentional. That's what makes the partnership so beautiful. So I'm excited to partner with you. I have a lot of ideas on how to do it, but my life's work has been about this. And so thank you for asking this.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. And I don't know if Alex DeLeo is in a place that she can voice her question, but she had a question about moving Atlanta forward. Alex, would you like to go next?
Yes, I think I'm unmuted. Hey, y'all, thanks for being here. Could you talk a little about moving Atlanta forward and why projects seem to be stuck in the pipeline, not getting completed, and what you would do to get things moving again and get those dollars spent and projects implemented?
Am I first?
You are first.
Okay. Yeah. So, Alex, thanks for that question. I know that you've probably been paying attention to our transportation committee and moving Atlanta forward. And I've been an advocate for the projects. And I will tell you, our delivery has been slow and slow and slow. But it has sped up over the last few months. And I will tell you that is because of advocacy. I've made sure that in District 11, because I had no idea I was running for president, that I had in-person meetings on the construction site every 3 to 6 months to hold ATL, DOT, and the executive branch accountable for the projects that were supposed to be delivered in my district. It still took a while, but I made sure that we made it to the finish line. So it just takes advocacy, and I absolutely believe that that we are headed in the right direction now. But I did all of that while council District 11.
Excellent. Now, Rohit.
Yeah, I think that we have to differentiate when something is an actual project management issue and when it's a political problem. So I think in some cases when it's a project management issue, it comes down to like, do the workers actually have what they need to be able to take these projects over the finish line? I've spent a lot of time with actual workers, people on the ground who will say, I'm not given the direction that I need, or I'm not given the tools and the resources that I need. The city of Atlanta actually publishes an audit to their credit that outlines all of this. It actually says what the challenges are, but we're not addressing those issues head on. We often are just doing something more symbolic because sometimes there are projects that we say it is impossible, it's so hard, it's a project management issue, but then when it is politically expedient, then all of a sudden that project gets done. I think that the advocacy, I agree that it was advocacy, but I think it's often advocacy of the community that ends up speaking out, saying, I'm tired of being treated this way and not having our projects get over the finish line. And I think when that advocacy makes enough noise, that's when you start to see things get actually done. And I don't think it should be that way.
I think I should have a rebuttal, please.
Okay, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Thank you. So I've been on the in the forefront and having those community meetings for the past 2 years. Again, I did not know that I was running for council president when I was holding my community meetings, holding ATL DOT accountable. There are some complete streets that have not started that should have been started. Mine was started and completed because I made sure that ATL DOT was on the construction site in front of the community every 3 to 6 months.
Thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Molly to wrap us up.
Thomas is going to take us from here.
Oh,
Well, I will. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it, Molly. I appreciate it, Michael. And thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. We're now going to move to the closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to kind of make their final case to the voters and the audience tonight. We will start with Rohit.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who is here and taking the time to like make sure that you understand who is running for office and who can best represent this community. Again, my name is Rohit Malhotra. I am so proud to be running for city council president because I think it is time for folks who like us have been in public service for so long, that have been like pushing on the city to be better and presenting ideas and solutions. We need an advocate inside of City Hall, someone who is willing to listen to communities that they agree with, but also communities that they may not agree with, that's willing to learn and really feels responsible to you, not to anybody else, but just the public. That's why this is a publicly elected position. And I'm excited about this because I think we need we need new generation of leadership that understands that Greenspace advocacy isn't just about trees. It's not just about, and that's important, but it's not just about parks. That too is important, but it is about quality of life. It is about the experience that people have when they live in a city. It's like why people want to be here. And for so many young people, this is an issue that that we talk about because we know that when climate change continues to go unaddressed, or we keep using outdated solutions or excuses to say we can't do it because of this, or we give people incentives to buy out of actually solving the problem, we are just perpetuating this, and it will be harmful to the next generation. And that's the type of leadership I want to operate with urgency on these issues. For me, this is about making sure we fulfill our promise on the tree canopy. It's making sure that we make sure people can walk to their parks, that this is about accessibility, this is about equity, and that we can have that conversation honestly. And we should never end up bargaining our values and our morals on this. This is not just an issue of something that is nice to have. Good green infrastructure is a necessity, and it can be life-changing or life-threatening, depending on the leadership that is driving a agenda and a vision forward. So thank you so much for your time.
Marci?
Thank you. Atlanta, you deserve leadership that is both principled and proven. I've delivered for Greenspace throughout District 11 and made sure that I advocated for Greenspace throughout our entire city. We have acquired over 600 new acres of parks and natural areas under my watch. It is so important for you to understand that because it is directly tied to the quality of life, our green spaces. Maintenance has always been top of mind for me. Installations of beautiful green spaces, dog parks, new parks, pathways to parks, trails to parks. I've already done this work and I will continue to do so as your council president. I will also make sure that I am appointing the correct chair for the committee that will be over your park spaces because I understand just the importance of it. My work reflects a deep commitment to the city that raised me, to equity, to access, to results. Not headlines, not rhetoric, but actual results. I believe in building a city where every family feels safe, every child has the opportunity, and every single neighborhood thrives. Atlanta's future is too important for gimmicks, smoke screens, and trickery. Let's choose a leader with a record of results, real results, and a vision rooted in accountability, safety, and progress. Let's move Atlanta forward together for the next 4 years. My name is Marci Collier Overstreet. I'm asking for your support and your vote. Thank you.
And thank you again to our candidates, Rohit Malhotra and Marci Collier Overstreet, for participating, to the 12 nonprofit Greenspace partners for hosting, and to all of you all in the audience for tuning in and engaging with us. Like many of you all have said in the chat, it's great to get to talk about these issues, so thank you all. This was a great discussion.
And just some last important details about voting. You can find your polling location at the Georgia's Secretary of State's My Voter page. Early voting is underway and it ends October 31st, Halloween. And the final day of voting is Election Day, November 1st. So have a good evening. Thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been great.